I'd now like to introduce Wayne Wescott, the CEO of ICLEI Oceania, to speak to us about the work of ICLEI Oceania on adaptation and mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Lord Mayor. And thank you again. I'd like to extend my welcome to you all here this morning. And the Lord Mayor will be pleased to hear that we don't expect people to tote around this particular time. You can get all this material off the website that is now up on the screen, and we would encourage you to do that, of course. I want to provide a bit of international context to this work. I think it's been wonderful, hasn't it, this morning to hear from the MAV and VLGA, and I appreciate them coming this morning to talk about their role in this important issue over the coming years. Last week I was in Jakarta talking to the governor of Jakarta, Fauzi Bowo, who's an amazing man and hopefully one day might become the president there of that country. And we were talking about, as he mentioned, a few serious problems that Jakarta's got, and I'm sure you can imagine the range of problems that Jakarta has or is dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And one of the things that they're very focused on is the changing climate and its impacts, particularly in terms of floods and significant health issues in that region. And I think one of the values that ICLEI brings to our local government world, all of us focused in what we're doing in our own backyards, is reminding us that there is a link. There's a link between all of us, and the capacity for each of us to learn in our own environments and to share that learning is a very powerful way of changing our culture. It's been, I think, the dominant way that we as an organisation and many other organisations and you as councils, and I notice the Greenhouse Alliance is here as well, lots of excellent organisations working in a similar way, trying to bring people together so that we share our knowledge, and by being together collectively we have something more than each of us can provide by ourselves. You all know, as Martin mentioned, the work that Cities for Climate Protection and councils using that program have developed over the years. And to remind ourselves, last year councils reported through that program that they saved 0.7% of Australia's total greenhouse gas emissions in a voluntary program done solely because we in local government think that it's a good thing to do, and we've developed powerful business cases to justify doing that work. So, and I think a very important part, we won't talk about it now, of the ongoing debate around the carbon pollution reduction scheme. So that work, some 5 years ago we started to think about the role of adaptation. A quick global context for this: it's critical, it's absolutely critical that countries like Australia focus on reducing CO2 emissions. We will never convince China or India to come to the table and work with us to have a global consensus unless we are prepared to demonstrate that we are reducing our CO2 emissions. So ICLEI's frame of that, oh, that wasn't a political speech, I promise.
He thinks he's in the council's chamber.
So certainly, so we see that as the inner ball of the larger ball of adaptation. So mitigation, reducing our CO2 emissions, critical first step politically. Critical also because if we are talking about our role as local governments, ensuring that our communities will be resilient into the future, that's the first and innermost core that we have to hold to, and we must fight to make sure that our focus stays on that. But you all know, and we've heard already, and Nina and Liana, I think, really re-emphasised the fact that we're at the front line of the changing climate as well, and we all know that. I live in Warrandyte, and we all know, in fact, what that might mean down the track. So we understand the need to carefully bring together these two to ensure both at the global and local level there isn't competition between these two for resources. This has already happened in the Conference of Parties, the Kyoto Protocol. We're already seeing competition for resources on these two issues. So critically at our local level, I believe we have an opportunity to demonstrate how we can bring these two together. How can we bring these two together and ensure that that we can provide potentially a role model for the future. How would we do that? Well, I think at the moment what we're trying to do is there's lots of different approaches to long-term resilience in this country. I travel around the country and I have talked to many people from research institutions, local governments, associations, professional associations, so on, all grappling with this issue. Some taking emergency management approaches, some taking risk management approaches as discussed before. We're clear that we think the future is about building the adaptive capacity of our management. That's what the future is going to be. Adaptive capacity is, as I think Liana mentioned, the ability to work with high levels of uncertainty and yet still be able to create compelling business cases. This is not easy. It's not straightforward. If it was easy, we'd be doing it now. But that is our future. And so ICLEI is, and we think our value then, to add to this debate, to the work that's being done by our fellow associations, by all of you in a whole range of different places, we think our value can be to try and develop, as we are developing, a program that builds on the 10 years of relentless focus on reducing our CO2 emissions, to build onto that, a focus on building our adaptive capacity for the future, so that we can legitimately be as resilient as we can. So that program, which we're in the process of developing, is going to be Adaptive and Resilient Cities and Communities is the title. It wouldn't be an ICLEI program if it didn't have a long and fairly inexplicable name. But that is going to try to, again, one of the things that we bring as a value as an organisation, try to focus on some key issues. The uncertainties of future climate scenarios. This is the first hurdle most of our councils are going to fall at. How do you know where to jump? And secondly, the critical issue of developing business cases for investment, so that we know that when we as local governments do things, we can justify internally and externally to our ratepayers and other levels of government that we're taking those decisions based on sound principles. Or, as we call it, a kind of proof of value, perhaps some kind of resilience index down the track, who knows. Hartman and I are discussing that at the moment. The key issue here, I think, is that program is up for movement from July 1. So we would be very excited to talk to you folks here today through the breaks. If you're interested, if you think this is something you want to be part of, please talk to any of the ICLEI staff here, but in particular Hartmut, who will be bringing this work together. I'm a believer in you start something and then you make it better as you go along. You don't spend 10 years planning, you get into it, you start. That's what we did with CCP, that's what we're going to do with ARCC or ARC, and we intend to build this program, and hopefully I think we'll be able to work in very closely with our colleague associations at all different levels. Yesterday, to finish, I was, for my sins, in Brisbane at the Green Cities Conference, which was a totally fantastic conference of 700 people, beautifully positioned to capture Anna Bligh as she begins her quest to be re-elected. I was driving back, and also for my sins, I was sharing a taxi with Tom Roper. Some hands up those who remember Tom Roper. There's a demographic test for us. For you youngies in the audience, Tom Roper, or Snappy Tom as we call him, was Victorian Treasurer and is now a very interesting kind of networker and influencer, can I say, especially in the climate change issue. We were driving back and talking about it, and he made, as he's wont to make, a funny comment about the houses lining the river running through Brisbane, how most of them would go under with a 2 metre sea level rise, which is the minimum predicted by the end of the century. And what would we do? And we had a fairly robust discussion about what we would do. That, in essence, is the debate we're about to begin. How in democracies are we going to handle this very difficult issue? And it seems to me one of the things we in local government can do is bring to that debate practical experience, the ability to bring issues together, reduction, adaptation, and the ability to have civilised but significant discussions. And I look forward, bring it on in my view, to, as Liana mentioned, let's talk in our town halls about the reality of climate change. Let's not walk away. Let's never say, oh, it's all too difficult. Let's go back, discuss, debate, and continue going forward. And in particular, let's make sure that we're doing practical things on the ground. So with that announcement that building on the toolkit, we are now focusing on a new program. I urge you all to talk to Hartman or myself or Martin or any of the other staff around about how you might be involved in that program. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.